The strategy was bold, the confidence louder. A young CEO unveiled her master plan to conquer Asia's market. Every eye sparkled with ambition, every nod a silent agreement. Then, as if for sport, she turned to the janitor in the back and said, "Unless Jackson here sees something we don't." They all laughed, but the mop paused. He glanced at the screen. No smile, no word, just a twitch in the eye and silence. Because sometimes the one they mock has seen this all before. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe. Your support keeps these stories alive. They called it a game changer. Chloe Maddox, 32, walked the floor of Janitor's top-floor boardroom like a showrunner. Fingers flipping through slides, voice sharp as cut glass. She didn't ask for attention. She owned it. Her plan was to expand aggressively into Asia by Q3, and her projections promised record-breaking revenue. And if anyone in this room finds a crack in this, she smiled, arms wide, I'll treat you to a 5-star dinner. Or heck, take my job. A few laughs, some nervous, some eager. Then she added, glancing toward the far corner, unless Jackson here wants to weigh in. Heads turned toward the janitor. Dark polo, blue card. Mop handle resting in his grip. 35, lean build, sun-dark skin, quiet face. He looked up, at Chloe, at the projection. Eyes narrowed slightly, then swept the room. No reaction, just a breath through the nose. And back to mopping. Someone chuckled. A junior exec crumpled a spare printout of the strategy deck and tossed it into Jackson's cart like a joke. Another added, just in case you want some light reading. More laughter. The meeting ended in applause. The team buzzed about big bonuses, bigger roles. Jackson finished wiping down the far glass wall, loaded up his cart, and left without a word. At the coffee nook near the exit, he slowed. 3 floor staff huddled around their break. One said, they say if we hit target, we're getting a bonus. Like real one, not the holiday card kind. If this deal works, maybe I can finally get Kayla into piano lessons. Another chimed in, and I can get mom's meds from Mexico. The good ones. They laughed. Clink cups went back to talking shift changes and gas prices. Jackson reached for a stir stick. Paused. Jackson stood nearby, pretending to read the label on a bottle of bleach. But his mind wasn't there. Something about that slide. That number. The slope on that demand curve. He stirred once, stared into the cup, and walked off. But his pace had changed. Jackson didn't go straight home that night. The slide number flashed in his head. That demand curve. The Q4 shipment delay they'd missed. A similar market dip from 6 years ago. How Chloe had glossed over it all. Her projections too clean, too confident. He didn't know why it bothered him so much. Maybe the young guy smiled talking about Ava and piano lessons. Or just old instincts, a part of himself he thought long buried. He slipped into the janitor's closet. His dusty tablet came to life. Old logins, old programs. He pulled up import cost trackers. Freight forecasts. The models might be new, but the math hadn't changed. He worked in silence, calculations filling the margins of discarded forms, the glow of his screen casting long shadows. Hours slipped by. By the time the fluorescent bulb above him flickered and died, for pages were covered in notes, arrows, question marks, and, finally, a word circled twice, collapse. He leaned back. Looking up, they really think that's going to hold, he whispered. He then picked up the crumpled printout from his cart, folded it neatly, and slipped it into his backpack. Then home. It was almost midnight when Jackson finally stepped inside the apartment. The hallway light flickered once before steadying. Emily was curled up on the couch, wrapped in that old fleece blanket with cartoon bears that used to belong to her mother. The TV was still on, muted reruns of a baking show, but her eyes were half shut, fighting sleep. He crouched down beside her, brushing a lock of hair from her cheek. She stirred. "You're late," she mumbled. "I know," he whispered. "Had to finish up a few things." She blinked, then sat up a little, rubbing her eyes. "Can we still have pancakes tomorrow?" "Of course," he smiled. "I'll make the ones with the smiley faces." She smiled, faint and tired. "They laughed at you again today, didn't they?" Jackson froze for half a beat. "Who told you that?" I heard Ms. Linda talking to the lunch lady. Said the janitor got dragged into some meeting like a joke. Jackson exhaled through his nose, shook his head. People say a lot of things. Emily's small voice came again, softer. I don't care if you mop floors. You always come back. That's more than most kids get. He couldn't answer, just nodded and kissed her forehead. Later, after tucking her in and turning off the lights, he sat at the kitchen table. The rent bill was due. So was the utility. On top of it sat a flyer from Emily's school. Registration for winter enrichment classes. Art, coding, and music. The corner was circled in purple crayon. Bigi nel piano, $180. He stared at it, tapped the edge of the page with a knuckle. The laptop on the counter blinked to life again. Notes from the forecast. Shots. His old logins were reactivated. It wasn't about pride anymore. It wasn't even about Chloe's numbers. It was about Emily. She didn't need him to be a CEO. She needed him to be present. To choose her this time. And if stopping a flawed plan meant keeping other fathers around for their own kids, too, then maybe this time, fixing something quietly was the loudest thing he could do. By morning, the decision had settled into him like the last note of a song he hadn't meant to play. Jackson showed up to work on time like always, uniform clean, collar straight, eyes calm. He said good morning to the same security guard, nodded at the front desk, pushed the same blue card down the polished hallway. But in his backpack, beneath the usual tools and rags, sat something new, a revised version of Chloe's expansion strategy, with 4 pages of detailed annotations, highlighted risks, and alternate paths. He hadn't told anyone, not even Emily. This wasn't about recognition or redemption. It was about a feeling, like holding a match near dry paper, too close to walk away, too late to pretend you didn't see the spark. Midway through his shift, he passed by the executive floor, vacant at this hour. He slipped the envelope onto the assistant's inbox. Plain manila, no note, no name. Just the title of the strategy, corrected, with a paperclip holding it together. He turned, walked away. No camera caught him. No applause. Just silence and footsteps. At lunch, he sat alone near the back loading dock, half listening to 2 engineers chatting nearby. They were still buzzing about Chloe's pitch. She's going to take the company global, one said. Fastest rise in 10 years. Jackson said nothing, just stared at the sandwich in his hands. And yet, something shifted that afternoon. First, a junior analyst named Marcus poked his head into the assistant's office, holding the envelope. Hey, where'd this come from? He asked. No idea, she shrugged. Didn't have a sender. But Marcus opened it anyway. Read a few lines. Stopped. Then read again. By 3 p.m., 2 more analysts were whispering in the corner office. By 4 o'clock, the legal team had pulled supply contracts for review. No one said Jackson's name. Why would they? He wasn't supposed to know those numbers. He wasn't supposed to be watching. But by 5 o'clock, Chloe had canceled her next 2 meetings. And the envelope, it had made its way to her desk. Across the building, Jackson emptied trash bins like he always did, working in rhythm, sleeves rolled to the elbow. And when he passed Chloe's glass-walled office at the end of the day, he didn't look inside. But for the first time, someone inside looked out. The next morning, the air at Janitor was noticeably different. Meetings started late. Phones rang longer. Chloe's assistant, usually brisk, composed, was seen pacing in heels too loud for comfort, whispering into her Bluetooth with furrowed brows. Even a front desk had noticed a shift. The company's rhythm, normally tight, efficient, had developed a subtle hitch. Jackson, of course, was mopping the North Corridor like usual. Same pace, same grip, same silence. But people were watching him now. Not everyone, and not openly, but enough. A few glances lingered longer. Conversations near him slowed, as if words were suddenly being weighed for consequence. At noon, while scrubbing the edge of a stairwell landing, he felt it, someone standing just behind him. Hey, Jackson, right? Came a voice. Nervous. Young. He turned to find Marcus, the junior analyst from the day before, holding a coffee in each hand. I figured you might want a break, Marcus said, offering one. Hope you take it with sugar. Jackson stared at the cup for a moment before taking it with a nod. No thank you. No questions. Marcus shifted his weight. So look, yesterday that file was that you? Jackson didn't answer. Instead, he looked out the window across the parking lot. The sky was overcast. You nailed it. If it was you, Marcus continued, voice quieter. The logistics flaw? The supplier hedging? I don't even know how you caught that. Legal says if we hadn't flagged it, we'd be locked into Q4 commitments that could have sunk our reserves. Jackson took a sip. You should be telling Chloe. I tried. She's not thrilled. She wants to know where it came from. A pause. Marcus scratched his temple. Truth is, a few of us, we've been looking through the revisions. There's some smart stuff in there. Really smart. Like someone's done this before. And I was just wondering. Jackson cut in, his tone level. Almost kind. You ever work on something that cost people their homes? Marcus blinked. No, sir. Or watch the number you calculated end up on a courtroom exhibit? Marcus hesitated. No. Jackson handed the coffee back, still half full. Keep the caffeine. You'll need it. Then he walked away, calm, deliberate, leaving Marcus standing awkwardly with both cups in hand. Back in the maintenance hall, Jackson opened his locker. Inside, tucked behind a worn jacket, was a picture of him and a woman with tired eyes and the same nose as Emily. She was holding baby Emily, swaddled in pink. His thumb brushed over the edge. Then a voice echoed down the hallway. Hey, you got a second? He turned. This time, it wasn't Marcus. It was Chloe, hair pinned up, tablet in hand, eyes sharper than before, but something behind them had changed. Curiosity, not arrogance. She held up the manila envelope. You always carry this kind of insight in your card. Jackson didn't smile. Sometimes people leave useful trash behind. She studied him for a long beat. Who are you really? She asked. Jackson didn't flinch. Just the guy who mops your floors. She raised an eyebrow, then turned, leaving without another word. But for the first time, her steps weren't as certain. The whispers had grown legs. By Thursday morning, people weren't just talking, they were listening. Listening for footsteps, watching corners, and most of all watching him. Jackson noticed it in small ways. The way conversations quieted when he passed. The way the HR intern gave a little nod when their eyes met in the break room, like they were sharing some unspoken secret. Even the janitorial supply closet, usually untouched, had a fresh box of gloves stocked, as if someone higher up was watching inventory now. But Jackson kept moving. That's what he did. Then came the rooftop lunch. It was quiet up there, rare for a building like Janitor, but Chloe had booked it for fresh air meetings, and today, she was alone. Or so she thought. Jackson was refilling the sanitizer stations near the elevators when he heard her heels on the rooftop stairs. Not fast, not furious, measured, intentional. By the time he made it up the final landing, she was already seated, back straight, tablet in her lap, coffee untouched. He walked past, silent, but she spoke without turning. You knew the supplier was fronting numbers. He stopped, waited. You also knew no one in this building was going to question it, because everyone wants to believe we're smarter than we are. Her voice was cool, but there was no venom in it this time. And you didn't tell anyone. You just slipped the truth under the door like it didn't matter. Jackson turned slowly, hands in his pockets. Chloe finally faced him. You were in the data business once, weren't you? He didn't answer. I had my assistant dig around. The handwriting on those notes, your margin notations, they matched the penmanship from an old industry white paper, a piece published in Forbes under the name J.D. Hale. Jackson said nothing. His eyes held hers, unwavering. She took a breath, then softer. Why are you mopping floors? Jackson looked out toward the city skyline, then down to the cars moving like ants beneath them. I buried my wife 3 years ago, he said. Business was booming. I missed the last call she made to me. Missed her last words. That night, I was in Shanghai, closing a deal no one remembers now. He paused. His voice didn't shake. It didn't have to. After that, I left it all. Because what's the point of building an empire if you're the only one standing in it? Chloe blinked. She didn't expect that. He turned to go. You're wasting what you know, she said. He paused at the stairwell. Maybe. But this job? It give me time to walk my kid to school. Help with math. Burn the pancakes. He looked back at her. That's not wasted. And then he was gone. Chloe sat back, fingers tight around the tablet. The wind tugged gently at the edges of the manila folder next to her. His notes, his warnings, his legacy left anonymous. But now it had a face and a reason. That evening, Jackson was standing in the kitchen, sleeves rolled, apron on, flipping pancakes shaped like clumsy dinosaurs. Emily sat at the counter, her elbows propped on her workbook, humming quietly as she colored in a spelling sheet. Outside, the winter dusk was sinking, draping the apartment in soft gray shadows. He turned to grab a plate when her voice cut through the quiet. "Dad, do you think I could still take piano class? If I work hard enough?" He paused. There was again the thing he'd been folding into corners and pushing away. That purple crayon circle on the school flyer. The way her eyes always paused at the piano store window on Main Street, lingering just a beat too long. And now, the hope tucked inside her words, cautious but still alive. He crouched beside her stool. "Why do you want to play piano, Em?" She shrugged. "I don't know. It just sounds like magic. Like you can make people feel stuff with your fingers." He smiled faintly. "You can." She nodded, then looked up at him, voice smaller. "Ms. Linda said it's expensive, that I shouldn't ask you again." Jackson looked at her, not just at her, but into her, and he felt it. That old ache. That tightrope between sacrifice and survival. He rose, turned off the stove, and stepped into the bedroom. From the top shelf of the closet, he pulled down an envelope marked emergencies only. Inside were bills saved over months, spare tips, weekend gigs, change jars counted in silence. $183. It would barely leave enough for groceries, let alone heat. But he stood there a long moment, staring at the money. Then he heard Emily hum again, soft, off-key but trying. That night, as she brushed her teeth, he tucked the flyer into his back pocket. The next morning, Jackson arrived early. Same uniform, same cart. But when he passed the HR window, he stopped. He watched as Chloe spoke to a manager inside, gesturing toward something on her tablet, nodding, clear-eyed, focused. But then, as she turned to leave, her eyes met his through the glass. She paused, and this time, she was the one who nodded first. At lunch, someone had left a wrapped box on his locker. No card. Inside was a worn, second-hand metronome and a folded piano class receipt. Emily's name was written on it in firm, neat letters. He stood there, still, for a long time, long enough to hear Chloe's voice drifting down the hallway. Sometimes the best investors are the ones who ask for nothing. He didn't smile, but he did whisper, "Thank you." Then he picked up the receipt, folded it into his pocket, and went back to work. Sunday was quiet. The kind of quiet that didn't come often in the city. No leaf blowers, no distant sirens. Just wind brushing over rooftops and bare tree limbs tapping windows like a forgotten rhythm. Jackson stood by the gravestone, hands in his coat pockets, eyes steady. The cemetery was mostly empty, just rows of names and granite edges softened by time. He shifted his weight, glanced down at the fresh flowers he'd brought, white daisies, her favorite, and set them gently at the base. Emily stood a few feet behind, bundled in her red coat, holding a thermos of cocoa. She didn't speak. She never did when they came here. Jackson exhaled slow. "I signed her up for piano," he said. Not sure who he was talking to, his wife or himself. "You'd like that. She's got your stubborn hands. Always moving, always curious." His voice cracked just barely. "I almost didn't. I keep thinking I'm doing okay. Then I hear her hum something or see the way she looks at that damn piano store window, and I remember she deserves more." He looked down. "And I know, I'm not giving her a perfect life, but I want to give her a real one. One where she knows she matters, where she's seen." A gust of wind pushed through the trees. Jackson closed his eyes for a moment. "I'm still figuring it out," he whispered. "I left everything behind when I lost you. Thought it was the right thing. Thought if I disappeared from that world, I'd never mess up again. But disappearing didn't fix anything." He looked up at the sky, gray and open. "She needs more than my shadow. She needs someone who stands up and tries." Emily stepped forward, slipped her small hand into his. "I think Mom hears you." He smiled gently, squeezed her hand. On the way home, They passed that piano store again. Emily didn't stop, didn't press her face to the glass like usual. She just looked at him, and he nodded. That night, after she fell asleep, Jackson sat at the kitchen table, staring at a folder Chloe had slipped him that afternoon. Marked advisory consultant, training and recruitment lead. No title, no fanfare, just a quiet offer. Flexible hours, enough pay, and a short note inside, scribbled in ink. Some kids deserve magic. Let's help more of them find it. He looked at the piano receipt pinned on the fridge, then back at the folder. This time, he didn't hesitate. Monday morning came with a gentle sun and the scent of rain lingering in the city air. Jackson didn't wear his maintenance uniform. No blue coveralls, no rattling cart. Instead, he chose a soft gray sweater, dark jeans, and his worn, polished shoes. Emily's tiny, crooked treble clef pin, a good luck charm, still clung to his chest. He entered through the back, a sense of peace guiding him. He nodded to the security guard, picked up a fallen coffee lid, but walked straight past the janitor's locker room. His path led to the east wing, to a room once marked training storage. Today its sign read, Development and People. Inside, young recruits fresh from grad school waited. Some looked confused when he entered. A whisper rippled. That's the janitor guy, right? Before quickly dying out. Jackson didn't say much. He picked up a marker, drew a triangle on the board, and wrote, Trust. Simplicity. People. Then he asked, what do all failed ventures have in common? A girl in glasses offered, bad timing, and wrong market fit, a guy in the back added. Jackson smiled slightly. All true, but what quietly kills companies? Egos. Assumptions. Forgetting that behind every number is a family, a face, a little girl wanting piano lessons. The room fell silent, not in shock, but with clarity. Across the hall, Chloe paused by the window, watching him sketch a decision impact diagram. Next to it, he wrote, what would this choice mean for the people who clean your offices? She smiled briefly, then moved on. At noon, Jackson ate in the break room, at his usual table. A few folks sat near him now. Something about him felt safe. A sticky note appeared under his coffee. You gave us more than insight. You gave us a mirror. He simply tucked it into his book. At 5:30, he picked up Emily. She ran into his arms, sheet music in her backpack, glitter on her fingers. Guess what I learned today? She beamed. You'll show me after dinner. That night, he tapped a quiet rhythm as she stumbled through a melody. Wrong notes, missed beats, and all. But she didn't stop, and neither did he. Saturday came wrapped in golden light, softening the city's edges. Inside Genitech's modest auditorium, chairs lined neatly. No fanfare, no cameras, just a routine staff development day. But today, they got Jackson. He stood near the front, not on a stage, just by a whiteboard, sleeves rolled, marker in hand. Today, he began, we're not talking projections or market wins. We're talking about people. The room quieted. I used to build companies, he continued. Big, profitable ones. But I lost something. Not just my family, myself. This was me when I walked away. I thought disappearing was the price of regret. But sometimes, what you walk away from circles back to find you. He paused. Someone in this building reminded me that you don't have to sacrifice purpose for love. You don't have to choose between ambition and kindness. You just have to pay attention to who you're building for. In the back row, Emily peeked from behind Chloe, a folded sheet of music clutched in her fingers. When the session ended, no one clapped. Not because they weren't moved, but because clapping felt too small for something so human. As people filed out, Chloe approached him with Emily. She wants to play something for you. Jackson turned, surprised. Emily pulled a small sheet music from her backpack. Just learned it yesterday, she whispered. But it's for you. Jackson crouched as she began, a short, clumsy melody, her two hands unsure but brave. He closed his eyes and smiled. Not the smile of a man returned to success, but the quiet smile of a father who finally came home. 3 weeks later, the old HR meeting room buzzed with life. Sunlight streamed through unshaded windows, illuminating walls adorned with hand-drawn flowcharts and colorful quotes like "fail forward." In one corner, A whiteboard overflowed with ideas. In another, granola bars and reused notebooks were stacked. The sign on the glass door read, Genitech Youth Startup Lab, led by J. Reynolds. Jackson stood at the back, arms folded loosely, letting the room's energy wash over him. In front, a 12-year-old girl stumbled through a pitch for an app connecting elderly neighbors with young helpers. Her voice trembled, then steadied. When she finished, the small audience of peers clapped, led by Emily, who beamed with pride before catching her father's eyes. After the session, Emily tugged Jackson's sleeve. "Dad," she whispered, "Miss Chloe watches you sometimes, right?" Jackson blinked. "Does she?" Emily giggled. "She smiled a lot when you were talking about the projects." He smirked. Maybe she just likes the kids' ideas. But he knew. He'd seen Chloe's warmth too. Subtle, unspoken, but present. Not romantic. Not yet. But possible. What mattered more was this room. These kids. This feeling. For the first time in years. Jackson didn't feel like a ghost of his former life. He wasn't hiding, wasn't shrinking. No grand title, no corner office. Just a man showing up, fully, quietly, honestly. Outside, as he and Emily walked home, she skipped beside him, humming something soft and uncertain. He didn't ask what it was. He just listened.